The CEO of the South African Post Office, Mark Barnes, was recently a guest here on the show. He then told us that the Postal Service would need a major cash injection in order to keep its doors open, while simultaneously finding sustainable revenue streams to keep it afloat long term. Recently, the South African Reserve Bank authorized the application for the Postbank, which will see them able to offer financial services in addition to their savings account offering. Joining us this evening is the Post Office CEO, Mark Barnes. Pleasure to have you with us, Mark.
Lovely to be here. Thanks
much appreciated. The last time there was huge amounts of money that we spoke about that you needed to keep the post office going, and it looks like the banks are also coming to the party. What is the latest?
Well, the latest is that we've raised all the capital we needed for the corporate plan, which is essentially our turnaround strategy. That was founded on a Treasury government guarantee, but the banks nowadays want to interrogate the business case as well. You know, the last thing they want to do is find themselves calling. So I think we were able to convince the major South African banks to advance. So we got all the money that we asked for. And that is an additional 2.7 billion over the 1 billion that we've already borrowed. So we're sitting at 3.7 billion, which is a lot of money.
Yes. So at least that side of things is taken care of.
Yeah.
But you've got to do specific things to make sure that those who are giving you the money, the guarantees, gain confidence that indeed the post office is viable. Since the last time we spoke, what are the initiatives that you've embarked on?
I think, first of all, it goes to the different streams of revenue. I think we're making great strides in trying to take back our market share of e-commerce and the courier and logistics business, which we had pretty much been competed out of. Actually, that's the first thing. One of the challenges was that we haven't paid creditors, which means that we haven't paid our logistics people, we haven't paid the trucks that deliver our mail, and when that delay happens, there was a loss of confidence. The other dynamic, which I think we finally resolved, was labour. You know, we had a massive strike in 2014, which went on for 4 months and essentially crippled the post office. We lost 30% of our revenues. They haven't come back yet, but they're starting to trickle back. People are phoning us up and saying, okay, we sort of think that you can do it. Now, can we start working together on increasing our volumes? People have come to us with volume increases of 8 times what they were previously doing with the post office. So there's a bit of a vote of confidence, and I think as South Africa, man, we want the post office back. We want it to work.
Yeah. Well, some South Africans, not all. I'll tell you, when the reports came out that the Reserve Bank was working on giving you a license, and we'll give an update on that in a moment. I saw commentary in the newspapers, some of them, people saying, how can you trust the post office with money if you can't trust them with your mail?
Well, interestingly enough, we've had the Postbanks been there all the time.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that we've lost over 3 billion in the last 2 years, we've never touched a cent of the Postbank's money. It's insulated. It's entirely insulated. The Postbank has about 7.3 billion of money on deposit. It's got 5.5 million bank accounts, and it's got a net capital value of about 2.5 billion. But it's completely insulated, and if we didn't do that, we would lose all our integrity. So the bank has always been intact, always will be.
So at least more than 5 million depositors have confidence in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So now it's a question of what could we offer them? Do we need someone who puts their monthly salary in the Postbank to then take it out and put it in another bank to service a loan that they got from that bank? Or should we try and capture that business? We found, for instance, even in the insurance market, some people have got 5, 6, 7 funeral policies just because they over-marketed to. If they had one bank account where they could consolidate all of their financial services and transactions, we believe it would be in their best interest. And so, particularly in the rural areas where we've got the footprint that's irreparable. So, for example, we have a total of 2,400 points of representation where the bank can be. That's 3 times any other bank in South Africa. And it's focused in the rural areas. So we're going to take banking to the people. The unbanked, the consequence of having an unbanked population is that you have an informal economy that doesn't participate. The informal economy, you go and sit in Alexander, the shopping center at the edge of that area, and you'll see a velocity of money. You'll see trade there much faster than in the formal economy. The informal economy is going 5, 6, 7%. The formal economy is growing at less than 1%. And yet those businesses can never reach sort of critical mass because they can't fund themselves to grow. So why can't you take 5 spaza shops, give them a bit of capital, they can start forming a chain, they can start having buying power, get things at reasonable prices. And we think that the solution to our inequality challenge in South Africa is funding the informal economy and inviting them into the party.
Now, I suppose those are the parts that you are talking to the Reserve Bank about, because taking deposits you are allowed to do that.
Yeah,
but
under the Postbank Act.
yes, so just explain the process of this licensing.
So we now, if we were to move beyond taking deposits within the confines of the Postbank Act, we now are starting to talk about offering different financial services, and in particular, at some point, going into lending. That introduces a risk on the other side of our balance sheet, which we don't have now. So right now, we take deposits, we put them back on deposits with banks or with Treasury.
Okay.
So there's very little, credit exposure.
Yes.
There's no credit exposure in the bank. If we're going to get into that business, we will have to convince the Reserve Bank, which is part of our oversight, that we have the right risk management systems, that we have the right independent board of directors, that we have appropriate management, that we have appropriate IT systems. And so they give you a conditional approval to continue with the process of approval, and they give you a list of things that you have to comply with. So we've got 12 months within which to comply with their requirements.
So there are sort of milestones every time.
And so we go and look, these are risk systems. Do they work? And they go, yeah, they work. Okay. Right. Have you got a proper IT recovery system?
Yes.
Yeah. And so eventually, as a double oversight, if you will, for our depositors, they come back and they say, these guys can do it.
So where would you fall in the financial services sector in South Africa? Does it mean that you will be competing with the established banks or not?
No, we don't have anything like their balance sheet or their ambition. I just think we're going to actually, there is 14% of the South African population, which is a lot of people, don't have any access to banking. But the nearest access they have to the formal economy is a post office. So why can't we use that, closeness to our people to invite them in? I mean, the successful businesses around the world today are where the business goes to the person. They don't expect the person to come to them. Take Uber as an example. I mean, Uber's a fantastic business, which, in the old days, you used to have to go and look for a taxi. Now you order the taxi in, man, it comes to you. But we want to take banking to the people. And so I don't see us competing with the major banks. We're not going to get into massive, project finance deals,
investment banking, and that.
We're not going to do any of that stuff. And this is going to be a bank which I think has to have a significant state role in it in terms of the cost of capital. And if we can get the appropriate cost of capital, the government borrows money at 8-9%. The unsecured lenders are borrowing money at 2 or 3 times that. In the private sector. And then they have to lend it out at 2 or 3 times that again because of bad debts and so on. And you end up with an unsustainable unsecured loan structure in South Africa. We've all seen the consequences of that.
So people are excluded, they're poorer and getting poorer every time they interact with the financial sector.
So we're going to go like, well, is that a problem for the government? Is it a challenge for the government? Is it an opportunity for the government? Hell yes.
But now let's go back to your core business, which is postal services, where, as I said, people are saying, post office has failed miserably. How can they be trusted? Are you turning things around there? And you also have had a labor incident recently. I don't know how you resolved that.
Okay, to both points. And first of all, we hadn't paid our creditors for like months. And so when you haven't paid the guy who delivers your post, he stops delivering it until you pay. When you haven't paid rent at your post office, they lock the doors. And whereas a parcel, which would normally take 2 days to get somewhere, it gets somewhere. We haven't paid that warehouse, so we have to pay them. And then 3 days later, we pay them, and then gets onto the truck. The guy drives the truck, says, I'm not taking this anywhere until you paid last month's bill. And so something that should have taken 3 days takes 6 weeks. When something lies around for 6 weeks, the chance of it being pilfered with or getting damaged or getting lost increases extraordinarily. We're paying our creditors. We've already started paying them. So the arteries of the post office are going to get unclogged. There's no reason why. We're not incompetent. We've got all the competencies. We've got all of the distribution networks. So there's no reason why we can't get back into the delivery of post timelessly, intact, on time. If we do that, we'll be able to do it at a much lower price than our competitors, who used the opportunity of our weakness to essentially, I mean, if you wanted to go and send something valuable to Cape Town through a competing courier company, they could charge you any price because you didn't trust the post office, but you wanted the thing to go. Well, if we can do it, we can do it at a cheaper rate because we've got the installed base. So, that's how we're going to get back into mail. But it's not about all of that stuff. It's actually about how people feel. And I think in the post office we had a downtrodden labour force who had broken promises from management for 4 or 5 years, who had labour broking issues where there was inequality amongst people doing the same jobs and so on. And we've drawn a line through all of that in a comprehensive agreement with labour, which addresses all of the past issues and has a structure going forward. And the way we did that, Tim, was to have a slightly different approach. My approach with the unions, and we engage each other for the first time, and I'm a learner here, was I've come here to help. tell me where the points of intersection are. Don't tell me where the points of conflict are. Think about the fact that your members and my employees are the same person. So can we help them?
Yes.
Can we build something
Yes.
that's sustainable? Can we introduce the possibility of economic dignity and move away from conflict economics? And that stuff is starting to work. When we were faced with something that people didn't understand, I wrote a letter to everyone in the business, and I said, "This is how much money we've got. This is the problem. This is what we need in order for everyone's job to be saved, and this is the truth." And we're dealing in the truth for the first time between management and labor, and it's working, man.
I want to come back to this in a moment. Just an update on the last point we discussed the last time. Your move back to the head office in the Pretoria CBD. How is that progressing?
Well, we're in the middle of now trying to enter into a court action in respect of the lease we've got in Centurion, which we believe was illegally founded and improperly founded. That is a process that takes time. But once we've got confidence that we're going to win that and that it's going the right way, we're moving back to Pretoria, maybe in October.
Well, going back to the earlier point about the red line that you've put and everything else that you are working on now to run a sustainable business, what do you think was going to work in your favor, particularly when it comes to your core business?
Yeah. I think, Tim, we've got some natural advantages. I mean, if you go to any small town in South Africa, you'll find one building common to all of them, that's the post office. We own it, it's bought and paid for. Beyond that, we have certain reserved rights. So, for example, all parcels and packages below 1 kilogram are the natural preserve of the post office unless someone can prove that we're not doing it, which they have been able to prove. But once we can do it, we get all of that back. Take registered mail. There's no legal way that you can send a registered piece of mail, a warrant for arrest, important legal document, other than through the post office by law. And so as we, get back into our rightful position of being able to do something, it's not a complicated business. We take stuff and we deliver it from one place to the other. We use the same roads, the same aeroplanes, the same transport system as our competitors. We've just wasted a lot of money over the last 5 years, not met our deals with labor, and we've now got the capital to do that. There's no reason why we can't get back to being the functional socio-economic center of this new country of ours.
Well, I said that is my last question, but final one in terms of the bank, because it's going to be one of the most spoken about things. Referring to the comments made by some members of the public, how do you feel or think that you will win their confidence to trust the Postbank? I know you've got 5 million members anyway, but to those who are skeptical, how do you convince them that the Postbank will work and deliver?
Well, I think they can draw confidence from a couple of things. First of all, if you look at our history, over the last 2 years when we lost 3 billion rand, we never touched the bank. Okay, first, so the proof of us being in trouble and not resorting to that is there. Second of all, the Reserve Bank doesn't willy-nilly give you a license, man. The Reserve Bank, when it grants you a license, has gone through an extraordinary process of due diligence on behalf of the public to give them the assurance that what's in there is working, properly managed and properly overseen. So the license kind of gives you that confidence, the process.
Mark Barnes, good luck to you.
Tim, thank you.
And
man.
of course, you say you will be in the CBD of Pretoria when?
Maybe in October.
Thank you. I hope you keep your word.
Yeah,
otherwise, I'm following you there in Tshwane to check if you're where you promised to be.
Come for a cup of tea.
Much appreciated. I will. I'll take up the offer. Much appreciated. That's the Post Office CEO, Mark Barnes, very bullish, as they say, optimistic about the future, saying that the Post Office is indeed turning around. And we'd like to hear your views about the Post Office. Write to us, send us tweets, and email is at tonightwithtimmodise@gmail.com. Tonight with Tim Modise @gmail.com, and you can send us your tweets at Tim Modise. We'd like to hear your views on the Post Office.